Grayson Mitchell thought spray painting the quiet girl's backpack during chemistry class would be another harmless prank until Dakota Pierce grabbed the aerosol can from his hand and sprayed it directly into his eyes, temporarily blinding the star athlete while live-streaming his confession about sexually harassing 14 girls at Ridgemont Preparatory Academy. What started as a cruel joke in the chemistry lab would expose 3 years of covered-up assault allegations against the untouchable Golden Boys of Connecticut's most prestigious boarding school, and the shy girl they'd targeted would become the spark that burned down an empire built on silence and privilege. Before we dive into Dakota's incredible story, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you. Your support through likes and comments helps these important stories reach more people who might be facing similar situations. And if this content resonates with you, consider hitting the thanks button below the video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives of courage and justice. These aren't just stories, they're lifelines for someone out there who needs to know they're not alone, that standing up is possible, that their voice matters. Now, let's get back to that cold November morning when everything changed. The morning of November 3rd started cold and gray at Ridgemont Preparatory Academy, the kind of New England chill that seeped through the 100-year-old stone buildings and made everyone huddle deeper into their designer coats. Dakota Pierce didn't have a designer coat. She had a second-hand North Face jacket with a broken zipper and a determination to survive one more day at the $45,000 per year institution where she'd earned a full academic scholarship based on her perfect SAT scores and her essay about growing up in a single-wide trailer with her disabled veteran mother. At 5'2" with mousy brown hair, she kept in a messy bun and thrift store clothes. She tried to make look presentable. Dakota had mastered the art of being invisible. She arrived at 7:15 a.m. every day, an hour before most students, to use the library computers. Since she couldn't afford a laptop, she ate lunch in the music practice rooms where no one would see her homemade sandwiches. She spoke only when teachers called on her, and even then kept her answers brief, despite knowing more than most of her classmates. But invisibility only worked when predators weren't actively hunting. Dakota felt the shift in atmosphere the moment she entered the chemistry lab for third period. The usual chatter died as she walked to her assigned lab station in the back corner. She'd learned to read the signs over 3 months at Ridgemont. The sudden silence, the exchanged glances, the barely suppressed smirks. Something was planned. She set down her salvaged backpack, a black JanSport she'd bought at Goodwill, and carefully mended where the seams had split. Inside were her meticulously organized notes, the textbooks she couldn't afford to replace if damaged, and the flip phone that was her only connection to her mother during the long days at school. Look who decided to grace us with her presence. A familiar voice drawled from across the lab. Grayson Mitchell lounged against the center lab station like he owned it, which, considering his family had donated the entire science wing, he practically did. 6'3" with the kind of athletic build that came from private trainers and the casual confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no. Grayson ruled Ridgemont's social hierarchy with the same brutal efficiency his father used to gut competing companies. His crew flanked him like a pack of well-dressed wolves. Carson Wade, whose father owned the largest pharmaceutical company in Connecticut, Hunter Blackwood, already recruited for Harvard's rowing team, and Easton James, who'd been expelled from 2 previous prep schools, but whose mother's political connections always smoothed things over. Just trying to get an education, Dakota said quietly, organizing her lab materials without looking up. An education, Grayson repeated, his voice dripping mock concern. Is that what you call it when someone takes charity to attend a school they can't afford? The other students in the lab carefully kept their eyes on their own stations. Dakota recognized the behavior, the same careful blindness that let Grayson and his friends operate without consequences. Everyone knew what happened to students who challenged the Golden Boys of Ridgemont. Leave her alone. Mitchell. The voice came from Trinity Chen, one of the few students who ever spoke up. She stood at the adjacent lab station, her designer, clothes, and family money giving her just enough social armor to occasionally push back. Grayson's eyes narrowed. Mind your own business. Shen, this doesn't concern you. Actually, it does, Trinity said, though Dakota could see her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her lab notebook. We're trying to have class. For a moment, the lab fell completely silent, except for the hum of the fume hoods. Then Grayson smiled, not the charming grin he used on teachers and parents, but something darker. You're right, he said, pushing off from the lab station. We should focus on our education. Speaking of which, he pulled something from his backpack. I brought supplies for today's experiment. The spray paint can gleamed under the fluorescent lights, metallic gold. The same color as Ridgemont's official seal. Dakota's stomach clenched. That's not on the materials list. Consider it extra credit, Grayson said, shaking the can so the ball bearing inside rattled ominously. See, I've been thinking about chemical reactions. Specifically, what happens when expensive paint meets cheap trash? He moved toward her station with the lazy confidence of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. Dakota's mind raced through options. Mr. Patterson, their chemistry teacher, was notoriously late, often arriving 10 or 15 minutes after the bell. The security cameras in the lab had been malfunctioning for weeks, convenient for students who wanted to cheat on tests. Apparently, assault their classmates. Don't, Dakota said, hating how small her voice sounded. Don't what? Grayson asked innocently. I'm just conducting an experiment. Carson, what's your hypothesis? Will trailer trash absorb paint better or worse than actual garbage? Carson laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Only one way to find out. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Grayson raised the spray paint can. Aiming it at Dakota's carefully mended backpack, his finger moved toward the nozzle. Other students backed away, not wanting to be collateral damage. Trinity opened her mouth to protest again. But Dakota moved first. 3 years of Aikido classes at the community center, the only extracurricular her mother could afford by cleaning the dojo in exchange for lesson shad, taught her that the best defense often meant redirecting an attacker's force. As Grayson committed to his motion, Dakota stepped inside his reach, grabbed his wrist with both hands, and twisted. The can spun in his grip, nozzle now pointing directly at his face. Just as his finger pressed down, the stream of metallic gold paint hit Grayson Mitchell square in the eyes. His scream echoed through the chemistry lab as he stumbled backward, hands clawing at his face. The paint can clattered to the floor, still hissing as paint pooled on the tiles. My eyes, Grayson yelled, stumbling blindly. I can't see, get it off. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Hunter rushed to help Grayson. Carson stood frozen in shock. Several students pulled out their phones, the modern instinct to document overriding everything else. But Dakota wasn't done. As Grayson flailed blindly, she grabbed her own phone, not to record Exaeon, but to live stream. The ancient flip phone couldn't do much. But the one upgrade she'd saved for was basic internet capability for emergency contact with her mother. This is Dakota Pierce at Ridgemont Prep, she said clearly, holding the phone steady as Grayson continued to yell in the background. I'm live streaming this for my safety. Grayson Mitchell just attempted to assault me with spray paint and accidentally sprayed himself. I need witnesses to what happens next. Turn that off! Carson lunged for her phone, but Trinity stepped between them. Back off, Trinity said firmly. She's protecting herself. More students had their phones out now, the situation spiraling beyond anyone's control. Grayson, still unable to see through the paint coating his eyes, stumbled toward Dakota's voice. You little he swung blindly, missing by feet. Grayson, Dakota said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. Before you do anything else, you should know I'm still streaming. Everything you say is being broadcast. I don't care, Grayson snarled. When I get my hands on you, you'll what? Dakota interrupted. Finish what you started with Madison Hayes, or Brooklyn Foster, or any of the other girls you've cornered in empty classrooms? The lab went silent except for Grayson's harsh breathing. Shut up, Hunter warned. finally understanding the danger. Grayson. I don't say anything else. But Grayson, blinded and enraged, was beyond reasoning. They wanted it. He spat. Every one of them. Playing hard to get, acting like they're too good for me. Just like you. Trailer trash. You all want attention. Want to matter. Want. I have that on video, someone said quietly. Dakota glanced over to see Avery Morrison, usually silent and studious, holding her phone with shaking hands. I have him admitting to assaulting Madison and Brooklyn. Delete that, Easton commanded, moving toward Avery. No, Avery said, backing away. Madison was my roommate before she transferred. She told me everything. But nobody believed her because she didn't have proof. I believed her. Another voice added. Sage Williams stepped forward. Phone also raised. Brooklyn's my cousin. She had to change schools because of the rumors you spread after she rejected you. Suddenly, the floodgates opened. More students began speaking up, voices overlapping, as they shared what they knew, what they'd seen, what they'd been too afraid to report. He cornered Faith Anderson after the homecoming dance. My sister said he followed her into the girls' bathroom. Remember when Hope Marshall suddenly left school? It wasn't because of grades. Shut up! Grayson roared, paint still streaming down his face like golden tears. All of you just shut up. That's when Mr. Patterson finally arrived, stopping dead in the doorway as he took in the scene. Grayson Mitchell covered in gold paint, multiple students recording. Dakota standing calmly in the center of it all. What in the... He didn't finish the sentence. Someone explain. Now, Grayson brought spray paint to class and tried to vandalize my property. Dakota said clearly. When I defended myself, he accidentally sprayed himself in the face. Then he started confessing to assaulting multiple female students. We have it all on video. Patterson's face went through several expressions: shock, disbelief, and finally the careful blankness of someone realizing they were in far over their head. Everyone put your phones away. No, Dakota said firmly. We're documenting this for our safety. Miss Pierce, the security cameras in this lab have been broken for 6 weeks. Dakota continued. Conveniently broken. Just like the ones in the empty classrooms where girls keep getting cornered. Just like the ones by the lacrosse team's locker room. Just like every place where Grayson and his friends operate without consequences. Patterson's face flushed. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, Trinity said, finding her courage. It's a pattern. We've all seen it. You've all seen it. The administration just pretends it doesn't happen because the Mitchell family donates millions. Someone get me to the nurse, Grayson moaned. Finally realizing the extent of his situation, the paint burns. It's non-toxic, Dakota said calmly. I checked the label when you pulled it out. You'll be fine once you wash it off. Unlike the girls whose lives you've destroyed, Carson tried one last time to salvage the situation. This is entrapment or something. She tricked him into confessing. Nobody tricked me into anything. Grayson snarled, pride overcoming sense. I said what I said. Those girls all wanted Grayson. Stop talking! Hunter physically grabbed his friend, trying to drag him toward the door. But it was too late. The live streams had already spread beyond the chemistry lab. Students in other classes were watching, sharing, commenting. The carefully controlled narrative of Ridgemont Prep was unraveling in real time. Patterson finally found his voice. Everyone to the principal's office. Now, as they filed out, Dakota noticed something that would have been impossible just minutes before other girls meeting her eyes. Nodding slightly, straightening their shoulders. The spell of silence was breaking. In the hallway, more students had gathered. Phones out. Whispers spreading like wildfire. Dakota heard fragments. Finally, someone stood up to him. My girlfriend said he grabbed her at the spring formal. Coaches always cover for him. Grayson, still being guided by Hunter and Carson, tried to salvage his dignity. This isn't over. Pierce, my father will bury you. You'll lose your scholarship. Your mother will lose her disability benefits. I'll make sure you end up exactly where you belong, in the gutter with the rest of the trash. Dakota stopped walking. The entire crowd fell silent. "Did you just threaten my family on live stream?" she asked quietly. Even Blint. Grayson must have realized his mistake because he finally stopped talking. The principal's office at Ridgemont Prep looked like something out of a movie about old money and older traditions. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs that cost more than Dakota's mother made in a month, portraits of distinguished alumni who'd gone on to run Fortune 500 companies and shape national policy. Dakota had been here exactly once before, on her first day, when Principal Whitman had given her the scholarship student speech about maintaining standards and being grateful for the opportunity. Now she sat in one of those expensive chairs, her thrift store clothes, a stark reminder of how much she didn't belong here. Across from her, Grayson Mitchell had finally gotten the paint washed off his face. Though his eyes were still red and streaming, his parents flanked him like designer-dressed bodyguards. Richard Mitchell looked like an older, harder version of his son's same square jaw. Same cold eyes. Same assumption that money could fix any problem. Catherine Mitchell wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than a year of Dakota's mother's disability checks. Her face a mask of controlled fury. "This is assault," Richard Mitchell said before Principal Whitman could speak. "That girl attacked my son with a chemical weapon. I want her arrested and expelled immediately." "Your son brought spray paint to chemistry class," Dakota said calmly. "I have video of him stating his intent to vandalize my property. After you manipulated him," Catherine interjected, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You clearly planned this to extort money from our family." Dakota felt heat rise in her cheeks. Everything came down to money with these people. They couldn't conceive of someone standing up to them for any other reason. "I didn't plan anything," Dakota said. "I defended myself when your son tried to destroy my belongings. The fact that he then confessed to assaulting multiple students is on him, not me." "Alleged assault," Richard corrected coldly. The ramblings of a teenager who'd just been attacked and was in pain. No court would consider that admissible. "This isn't a court." "Doctor," Angela Reeves said from the doorway. The school counselor entered with a stack of folders and a grim expression. "It's a school with a legal obligation to investigate Title IX violations." Principal Whitman, who'd been silently calculating the political ramifications, finally spoke. "Dr. Reeves, I don't think 14 girls." Dr. Reeves interrupted, setting the folders on his desk with a decisive thud. "That's how many have come to my office in the past 2 hours. 14 girls with stories about Grayson Mitchell and his friends, some with evidence as screenshots of threatening texts, photos of bruises, recordings of verbal harassment. They were all too afraid to come forward before, but Miss Pierce's courage has changed that." Catherine Mitchell's composed mask cracked slightly. "This is a coordinated attack on our son. These girls are obviously lying for attention or money. One of them is Senator Walsh's daughter," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "Another is Judge Martinez's niece. Are you suggesting they need money or attention?" The room fell silent. Richard Mitchell's face went through several interesting color changes as he processed this information. Attacking scholarship students was one thing. Going after the children of other powerful families was quite another. "There must be some misunderstanding," he said finally, his tone notably less aggressive. "The only misunderstanding," Dr. Reeves continued, "is the belief that wealth and status exempt someone from basic human decency." Principal Whitman, "I've already contacted the district's Title IX coordinator. They'll be here within the hour to begin a formal investigation." Whitman looked like he'd aged a decade in the past few minutes. "Dr. Reeves, perhaps we should discuss this privately first." "No more private discussions," Dakota interrupted. "That's how we got here. Private meetings where victims are silenced and predators are protected. Everything needs to be documented and transparent from now on. You don't get to make demands." Catherine Mitchell snapped. "You're nothing. A charity case who should be grateful we even allow you in this building." "Mom," Grayson said warningly, speaking for the first time since the paint was washed off. Even he seemed to realize she'd gone too far. "What?" Catherine turned on her son. "It's true. We donate millions to this school. We've built wings, funded programs, provided opportunities for ungrateful children like her, and this is how we're repaid? By expecting your son to follow the same rules as everyone else?" Dr. Reeves asked. "By holding him accountable when he hurts people?" "He didn't hurt anyone," Richard insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. The live-streamed confession was hard to argue with. A knock on the door interrupted the escalating tension. Principal Whitman's assistant entered, looking flustered. "Sir, there are news vans outside. Someone leaked the live-stream videos to local media. They're calling it Paintgate and asking for statements about sexual assault cover-ups at Ridgemont." Richard Mitchell stood abruptly. "We're leaving. Grayson, come. Our lawyers will handle this." "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "he needs to stay." Two police officers entered, their presence immediately shifting the room's dynamic. The older officer, whose badge read Detective Chen, looked directly at Grayson. "We've received multiple formal complaints of assault, harassment, and criminal threatening. We need to ask you some questions." "This is ridiculous," Richard blustered. "He's a child. He's 18. Detective Chen corrected. "A legal adult. And several of his alleged victims are minors, which makes this even more serious." Catherine Mitchell's face had gone pale beneath her perfect makeup. "We're not saying anything without our lawyers present." "That's your right," Detective Chen agreed. "But the videos are already public. Multiple witnesses have come forward. This investigation is happening with or without your cooperation." As the police escorted Grayson out, he turned back to look at Dakota. She expected anger, threats, the usual bravado. Instead, she saw something that might have been fear. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You're right," Dakota replied. "It's just beginning." The rest of the day blurred into a series of statements, interviews, and revelations. The district's Title IX coordinator arrived with a team of investigators. One by one, girls who'd been silent for months or years found their voices. Madison Hayes video called from her new school in Vermont, describing how Grayson had cornered her in an empty music room and put his hands on her. When she'd reported it, she was told it was a misunderstanding and that she should be flattered by the attention. Brooklyn Foster submitted screenshots of texts Grayson had sent after she rejected him threats to ruin her reputation, to have her scholarship revoked, to make her life hell until she gave in. Autumn Chen revealed that Carson Wade had drugged her drink at a lacrosse team party, though she'd managed to escape before anything worse happened. Security footage from that night had mysteriously disappeared. Sierra Blackwood Hunter's own cousin admitted he'd been blackmailing her with compromising photos taken without her consent. Each story painted a picture of systematic predation enabled by institutional indifference. The boys targeted vulnerable girls' scholarship students, minorities, anyone without the social or financial capital to fight back. When victims tried to report, they were dismissed, threatened, or paid off. The few who persisted were labeled troublemakers and pushed out. Dakota found herself at the center of it all. The reluctant catalyst who turned a moment of self-defense into a movement, Yasmin Rodriguez, student body president and daughter of a civil rights lawyer, appointed herself Dakota's unofficial advisor. "You need to be strategic," Jasmine said, as they sat in the empty cafeteria after hours, surrounded by notes and evidence. "The Mitchells will try to destroy you. They'll attack your character, your family, your finances. We need to be ready." "I didn't ask for this," Dakota said, exhaustion weighing down every word. "I just wanted to get through high school and go to college. None of us asked for this." Yasmin replied, "But you did something most of us were too scared to do. You fought back publicly. Now we need to make sure your sacrifice means something." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dakota's heart sank as she read it. "You think you won something today? Wait until tomorrow." Gee. She showed it to Jasmine, who immediately screenshotted it. More evidence, He's too arrogant to realize he's digging his own grave. But Dakota wasn't so sure. The Mitchells had money, lawyers, connections. They'd weathered scandals before. What if this time was no different? As if reading her thoughts, Jasmine squeezed her shoulder. This feels different. The live stream. The multiple victims. The media attention. They can't make this disappear quietly. You've given everyone permission to speak the truth. Through the cafeteria windows, Dakota could see the news vans still parked outside. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new threats, new challenges. But for the first time since arriving at Ridgemont, she didn't feel alone. Her phone rang her mother, calling from her night shift at the gas station. "Baby, I saw the news." Her mother's voice was thick with worry and pride. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." "Mom," Dakota said, meaning it for the first time in months. "It's complicated, but I'm okay. That boy, his family, they'll come after us. I know, but I couldn't let him hurt me or anyone else anymore." There was a pause. Then her mother said quietly, "Your father would be so proud. Standing up to bullies. Protecting others. That's what he fought for too." After they hung up, Dakota sat in the quiet cafeteria, processing everything that had happened. This morning, she'd been invisible, just trying to survive. Now she was the girl who'd literally blinded a predator with his own weapon and exposed years of abuse in the process. Trinity Chen appeared in the doorway, followed by several other girls Dakota recognized but had never spoken to. They filed in silently, forming a loose circle around the table. "We wanted to thank you," Trinity said simply, "and to let you know you're not alone in this. Whatever happens next, we're with you." One by one, they shared their stories. Not all involved Grayson or his crew directly, but all revealed the toxic culture that allowed such behavior to flourish. The lacrosse team's scoring system for sleeping with scholarship girls, the secret Facebook group where boys shared photos and rated female students, the unwritten rules about which girls were fair game and which were protected by family connections. "We're starting a coalition," said Morgan Phillips, a senior who'd been documenting harassment for years, not just to address past abuse, but to change the culture going forward. "We want you to help lead it." Dakota looked around at the faces surrounding her, determined, angry, hopeful. "I don't know how to lead anything. I've spent 3 months trying to be invisible." "That's exactly why you're perfect," Morgan replied. "You understand what it's like to be targeted, to be powerless. But you also proved that power can be taken, not just given." Before Dakota could respond, her phone lit up with notifications. The live stream videos had gone viral. Number Paintgate Ridgemont was trending. National news outlets were picking up the story. Comments poured in from students at other prep schools, sharing similar experiences. "This is bigger than just Ridgemont," Yasmine breathed, scrolling through her phone. "This is happening everywhere." A text from Dr. Reeves appeared on Dakota's screen. "Emergency assembly tomorrow morning. The board wants to address the situation. Be prepared for backlash. But know that many of us support you. Change is coming." As the girls continued planning late into the evening, Dakota thought about the spray paint still splattered across the chemistry lab floor. Gold, the color of Ridgemont's seal, of privilege and tradition, and all the things she'd never have, but also the color of revolution, of light breaking through darkness, of truth too bright to ignore. Tomorrow, Grayson Mitchell would return with his family's army of lawyers and PR specialists. The school would try to contain the scandal. Powerful families would maneuver to protect their interests. But tonight, in a cafeteria full of girls who'd found their voices, Dakota Pierce felt the beginnings of real change. She'd used Grayson's own weapon against him, turned his symbol of dominance into evidence of his crimes. The war for Ridgemont's soul had begun, and for the first time, the underdogs had a fighting chance. As she finally prepared to leave, Trinity caught her arm. He was wrong. "You know, what his mother said. You're not nothing. After today, you might be the most important person at this school." Dakota thought about the 14 girls who'd come forward, the dozens more still gathering courage, the systemic rot being dragged into the light. "No," she said quietly. We're all important. It just took some spray paint to help everyone see it. The gold was still under Grayson's fingernails when the police photographed his hands. It would be there in every photo, every court document, every news story, a permanent reminder of the moment his victims fought back. And in the chemistry lab, maintenance had tried 3 different solvents, but the gold paint wouldn't come off the floor completely. It remained there like a battle scar, marking the spot where Dakota Pierce had transformed from prey to predator, from victim to victor, from nothing to everything. The emergency assembly at 7:30 a.m. drew the largest crowd Ridgemont Prep had seen in decades. Every seat in the auditorium was filled students, parents, faculty, board members, and media who'd somehow secured press passes. Dakota sat in the 3rd row, surrounded by the coalition of girls who'd stayed up planning until 2 a.m. She'd barely slept, her phone buzzing constantly with threats, support, and interview requests she'd declined. Principal Whitman approached the podium looking haggard, his usual pompous confidence replaced by barely concealed panic. Behind him sat the board of trustees, 12 individuals whose combined net worth could buy a small country. Richard Mitchell occupied the center seat, his expression carved from stone. "Good morning," Whitman began, his voice lacking its usual authority. "As you know, yesterday's incident has raised serious concerns about student safety and conduct at Ridgemont. The board has met through the night to address these issues." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Dakota noticed how Whitman said incident, not assault or harassment. The minimization had already begun. After careful consideration, Whitman continued, "We've decided to implement new policies regarding student behavior and reporting procedures. Additionally, Mr. Grayson Mitchell has voluntarily withdrawn from Ridgemont to seek counseling." "That's it?" The voice rang out from the middle of the auditorium. Sierra Blackwood stood up, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "He assaults 14 girls and just gets to withdraw?" "Miss Blackwood, please sit." "No," Sierra interrupted. "I won't sit down and be quiet anymore. None of us will." One by one, girls throughout the auditorium began standing. 14 at first, the ones who'd formally reported, then more, 20, 40, 60. By the time the standing stopped, nearly a third of the female student body was on their feet. "This is what you're covering up," Jasmine Rodriguez said loudly. "Not 14 victims, dozens. And those are just the ones brave enough to stand." Richard Mitchell grabbed the microphone from Whitman. "This is a coordinated attack on my family. These girls are being manipulated." "By who?" Dr. Reeves called out from the faculty section. "Who's manipulating them? Mr. Mitchell, the scholarship student you tried to destroy? Or maybe they're just tired of being prey in what should be a safe learning environment." "You're fired," Richard snarled. "You can't fire me." "Doctor," Reeves replied calmly, "I have tenure and a union. Try again." The assembly descended into chaos. Parents shouted accusations at each other. Board members huddled in panicked conferences. Students pulled out phones to live stream the meltdown of Ridgemont's carefully maintained facade. Through it all, Dakota remained seated, watching Richard Mitchell's face grow redder. With each girl who stood, she'd learned something important from yesterday's sometimes. The most powerful action was forcing others to reveal their true nature. "Enough!" Principal Whitman shouted into the microphone, feedback screeching through the speakers. "Everyone sit down immediately or face suspension." "Suspend us all, then," Morgan Phillips said, still standing. "See how that looks in the news. Ridgemont Prep suspends assault victims for speaking out." That's when Dakota noticed someone moving through the crowd, a woman in a sharp navy suit she didn't recognize. The woman reached the stage and whispered something to one of the board members, whose face immediately paled. "Who is that?" Dakota whispered to Jasmine. "No idea. But look at the board's reaction." The woman took the microphone with an authority that made even Richard Mitchell step back. "My name is Patricia Winters. I'm the lead investigator for the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. We received multiple complaints last night regarding Title IX violations at this institution." The auditorium fell silent. "As of this morning, Winters continued. Ridgemont Preparatory Academy is under federal investigation. Any attempt to retaliate against students who have filed complaints will result in criminal charges. Any attempt to destroy evidence will result in criminal charges. Any attempt to intimidate witnesses will result in criminal charges. She looked directly at Richard Mitchell. This includes threats made by parents or their representatives. This is overreach. Richard protested. You have no authority. I have a federal warrant. Winters interrupted. Producing a document will be seizing all electronic communications, disciplinary records, and security footage from the past 5 years. I suggest you contact your lawyers. Mr. Mitchell, you'll need them. As federal agents entered the auditorium, Dakota felt her phone vibrate. Another unknown number. You destroyed everything. You'll pay for this? She showed it to Winters, who immediately had an agent document it. That's witness intimidation. We'll trace the number. The assembly disbanded in chaos, but Dakota found herself pulled aside by Winters. Miss Pierce, we'll need your full statement. But first, I want you to know that what you did yesterday was incredibly brave. Your live stream gave us the probable cause we needed to intervene. I just defended myself, Dakota said. With spray paint, Winters smiled slightly. Poetic justice. The gold paint under his fingernails was particularly damning hard to claim innocence when you're literally caught gold-handed. Over the next hours, the federal investigation moved with stunning efficiency. Agents interviewed students, sized computers, and uncovered years of complaints buried in filing cabinets. The pattern was worse than anyone had imagined. Not just Grayson and his crew, but a systematic culture of abuse stretching back decades. Alumni came forward with historical complaints. Former teachers revealed pressure to alter grades for athletes who'd assaulted classmates. An entire ecosystem of privilege protecting predators. By noon, 3 more students had been arrested. Carson Wade for the drugging incident, Hunter Blackwood for the revenge porn, Easton James for witness intimidation. He'd been the one sending threatening texts. Dakota found herself in the eye of the storm. Simultaneously protected and exposed, federal agents escorted her between classes. Reporters waited outside school grounds. Her story had become a symbol of something larger, the Me Too movement reaching into elite prep schools, challenging the last bastions of unchecked privilege. During lunch, she sat with her coalition in a protected area of the cafeteria. The threats had escalated, but so had the support. Messages poured in from students at other schools, sharing similar stories, asking for advice. We need to be strategic about this, Morgan said. Scrolling through her phone, the Mitchell family has already hired a PR firm. They're trying to spin this as a witch hunt. Let them, Trinity said firmly. We have evidence. They have spin? Evidence doesn't always win. Jasmine warned. Not against this much money and power. That's when River Chen, a sophomore Dakota had never spoken to before, approached their table nervously. I have something you need to see, they said quietly, pulling out a flash drive. But I need protection first. What's on here? It's bad. After getting assurance from the federal agents, River revealed what they discovered. As president of the computer club, they'd been asked months ago to help fix the security system. What they'd actually found was systematic deletion of footage, but River had secretly backed everything up. 3 years of erased footage. River explained as they scrolled through files. Every time there was an incident, someone would delete the relevant cameras, but they didn't know I kept copies. The footage was damning. Grayson cornering girls in empty hallways, Carson slipping something into drinks at school events, Hunter taking photos up girls' skirts on the stairs, Easton destroying property of students who reported incidents. This is evidence of conspiracy, Patricia Winters said when she reviewed the files. Organized criminal activity. This goes far beyond school discipline. That afternoon, as Dakota walked to her last class, she noticed Grayson Mitchell standing by the parking lot. Despite his supposed withdrawal, he wasn't alone. 2 men in expensive suits flanked him. Lovers. Probably. She tried to avoid them, but Grayson stepped into her path. The federal agents tensed, but he held up his hands. "Just want to talk," he said. His eyes were still bloodshot from the paint, but something else had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been desperation. "Your lawyers probably advise against that," Dakota said. "They do." He glanced at the men, who looked deeply unhappy. "But I need you to know something. This wasn't supposed to happen like this." "What was supposed to happen? You'd vandalize my property, and I'd cry quietly in a corner?" "No. He struggled for words, seemingly realizing he'd never actually had to explain himself before. It was just how things were. "My grandfather, this is what they taught me. That people like us take what we want from people like you. People like me," Dakota repeated flatly. "Poor people. Scholarship kids. The ones who don't matter." He said it so naturally, like explaining the weather. "But you fought back. No one ever fought back before. 14 girls reported you. They all fought back, and they were all silenced, paid off or pushed out. That's how it works." He gestured at the school around them. "That's how it's always worked. Until you and that damn paint." One of his lawyers grabbed his arm. "Mr. Mitchell, stop talking." But Grayson shook him off. "Do you know what my father said last night? That I was sloppy. Not that I was wrong. Just sloppy. That I should have been more careful, more subtle, like he was." Dakota felt a chill. "Your father, class of '92. His name's on the library because of how much he donated. Want to guess why he donated so much?" Grayson laughed bitterly. "Guilt money. Hush money. Blood money. That's what built half this school. Mr. Mitchell, we're leaving." Now, the lawyer physically dragged Grayson away, but he called back over his shoulder, "Check the basement of the library. They keep the old disciplinary files there. Decades of them. You'll see I'm not the first Mitchell man to need covering up." As they forced him into a Blacktown car, Dakota stood frozen. She'd thought this was about stopping one predator, maybe his crew. But Grayson's words suggested something deeper: generational rot built into Ridgemont's foundation. She immediately told Patricia Winters, who dispatched agents to the library. What they found made national headlines by evening. Boxes of complaints dating back 40 years. Patterns of assault. Cover-ups. And payoffs. A ledger tracking donations that corresponded suspiciously with withdrawn complaints. Richard Mitchell wasn't just protecting his son. He was protecting a family legacy of predation. That night, Dakota finally made it home to find her mother waiting with Chinese takeout from the place that gave them a discount. Quite a day, her mother said simply, pulling her into a fierce hug. They ate in companionable silence, the cheap food tasting like comfort after the chaos. Finally, her mother spoke. "I'm proud of you, baby. Scared out of my mind, but proud." "They're going to keep coming after us," Dakota said. "The Mitchells, their friends, everyone with something to lose. Let them come." Her mother's voice hardened. "We've survived worse. Your father faced down insurgents in Afghanistan. I faced down cancer. You faced down a predator with spray paint. We're Pierce women. We don't break easy." Her phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. Dakota braced herself for another threat, but instead found, "My name is Willow Mitchell. I'm Grayson's younger sister at St. Catherine's Academy. What you did was brave. There are things about my family you should know. Can we meet?" Dakota showed her mother, who frowned. "Could be a trap. Could be." Dakota agreed. But what if it's not? They arranged to meet the next day in a public place with federal agents present. Willow Mitchell looked nothing like her brother Small. Nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. She was 15, 2 years younger than Grayson, and carried herself like someone who'd learned to be invisible in a dangerous house. "I've been documenting things," she said without preamble, sliding a tablet across the table. "Audio recordings, videos, photos. 3 years' worth. I knew someday someone would stand up to them, and I wanted to be ready." The recordings were explosive. Richard Mitchell discussing how to handle assault complaints, Catherine Mitchell bribing school officials, Grayson bragging about his conquest to his father, who laughed and offered advice on selecting safer targets. "Why?" Dakota asked. "He's your family." Willow's laugh was bitter beyond her years. "Family. Do you know what it's like growing up in that house, watching how they treat women, knowing that one day I'd be old enough to be a target too? Not from Grayson, he's my brother, but his friends, my father's associates. I've been preparing for this my whole life. Your parents will destroy you for this," Dakota said. "They've been destroying me slowly already. At least this way. It means something." Willow met her eyes. "You gave me courage. If a scholarship kid could stand up to them, maybe I could too." The revelations from Willow's recordings made the federal case airtight. Richard Mitchell was arrested on charges of obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and conspiracy. Catherine Mitchell faced charges of bribery. Their carefully constructed empire began crumbling as more victims came forward, emboldened by the federal protection and the knowledge that the Mitchells could no longer silence them. A week later, Ridgemont Prep announced comprehensive reforms. Principal Whitman resigned in disgrace. Dr. Reeves was appointed interim principal, with a mandate to completely restructure the school's culture. The entire athletic department was under review. Mandatory consent education was implemented. An independent ombudsman was appointed to handle future complaints, but the real change was in the hallways. The rigid hierarchy that had enabled predators was dissolving. Scholarship students walked with their heads high. The coalition Dakota had helped spark became an official organization with funding and faculty support. The untouchable athletes found themselves very touchable indeed when their protection vanished. Dakota herself became something of a legend, the girl who'd weaponized spray paint against privilege. Colleges reached out with scholarship offers, impressed by her courage and leadership. Interview requests continued pouring in, though she accepted few. Preferring to focus on her studies and the ongoing work of reform, Dakota smiled, remembering the terrified girl she'd been just months ago, clutching her second-hand backpack and trying to stay invisible. That girl was gone, transformed by necessity into someone who could face down predators and systems alike. The coalition was meeting in an hour to plan their next initiatives, expanding to other schools, creating resources for victims, lobbying for legislative change. What had started as one girl's moment of self-defense had become a movement. As she left the chemistry lab, Dakota passed a group of freshman girls chatting by their lockers. They looked so young, so vulnerable, but they also looked unafraid, wearing their scholarship status as a badge of honor rather than a mark of shame. The gold stain would fade eventually, but its legacy would endure. In every girl who reported harassment without fear, in every boy who learned that privilege didn't mean permission, in every administrator who chose protection over profit, Dakota Pierce had transformed from prey to protector, from nothing to everything. And all it had taken was turning a bully's weapon against him, blinding him with his own golden arrogance, until everyone could finally see the truth.